All right, so this is going to be the first topic of Stay Abroad. I've chosen five topics. Living in England. The other topic is music. And then I'm going to talk about food, the Brexit, and education. And to do so, I interviewed 10 people for all these topics. But for the first topic, I interviewed five people. So for this specific topic, living in England, I chose Tony, an English guy that lives in Holland at the moment. He came here 8 years ago. Afterwards, I chose Janice. She lived in England for 12 years. That's where she met Tony. They're a couple. Sarah is an English lady, 45 years old, always lived in England. I interviewed Adi. He works in the Navy in England. And Maria, a Portuguese woman that also lived in England. She's actually my mother. She lived there for 20 years. Right, so I'm going to start with the introduction of the topic, which was living in England. Well, the topic is about, it's not so cultural, I just wanted to have an overall impression, so about how it is to live in England, because myself, I've thought about going abroad as well, so I find it kind of interesting to know what moves them and why they choose to live somewhere, and and in specific England, what is so special about England, because it's totally different, I think. So this topic is about living in England. I wanted to know what people experience there, of course. I wanted to find out what they most like, what they dislike about England, and actually, what would they change if they could change something about England? So now I'm going to discuss the findings of the interview data. What Tony said, well, the first person was Tony. The first person I interviewed was Tony. He liked living in England, of course, as he is English. He's lived there all his life. And now he lives in Holland, so he misses his family quite much. What he also misses is the nature in England. He reckons you can just get lost somewhere, whereas in Holland, everything is you just can't get lost here because everything's so organised that you just end up somewhere. You just end up finding people or something to do, whereas in England you can just get lost and you see where you get to. He didn't like the fact that in England it rained a lot more than in Holland. Well, I don't know if it's true. I've been in England 3 or 4 times and it didn't rain that much, but I was just there on holiday, so I can't say. And the other thing Tony said was he didn't agree with the policies, the tax policies, because in England you pay less tax when you work, and in Holland you pay more tax, which is kind of more social, and he kind of liked that way of living here in Holland. So, yes, I think that would be it for Tony. Tony's also the person I interviewed that elaborated the most, to be honest. The next person was Janice. She liked living in England. She lived there for several years. She liked the fact that people go to a pub after work, and she also stated that transport is very organised, easy to travel around. She did not dislike England. She would go back again, but she has her family here. As well, also like Tony, she didn't like the weather there, and the housing is also quite expensive in England. But then again, Holland is the same as well at the moment. Then I'm going to move on to Sarah. she lived there her whole life. She couldn't see herself living somewhere because what she said was, whenever I go abroad, it's like after a week she starts getting homesick and she wants to go back. So I think she lives in a kind of a bubble and she can't get out of it. She misses England every time she goes abroad. She comes from Dagenham, London, and she works at Ford's. Adi, well, he lived there for 12 years. He liked England because he was living in Plymouth, and because he surfs, he likes the nature in Cornwall, and he did not like the weather neither. For Maria, she lived there 20 years. She think the things she most liked was the English sense of humour, and she liked the way people lived, like Janice, like Janice mentioned, people go to a pub and enjoy themselves after work. What she didn't like was the weather as well. I think no one likes the weather in England, and the traffic jam. So I'm going to reflect on this aspect of culture. Well, living in England has nothing to do with culture, but at the same time it does, because when you live there you encounter all these kind of cultural elements such as food, and it includes everything. Therefore I found it interesting to know what people think. What caught my attention was what Tony said, that England should be a little bit more social. So it's like what he was saying was, if you work hard, you get a reward, but if you don't, there's no social policies to help people that can't get a job, for example. Whereas in Holland, it's more social. People, the government takes a good look after people. The government ensures that people can get by. Sorry. Yes, and that people have a good sense of humour, and English people are also very polite, according to Adi. I really enjoyed reflection on the interview. I really enjoyed interviewing these people. Not only I learned about the topic, what I also enjoyed was that, well, most of the people I interviewed lived in London. Well, Stevenage, Dagenham, which is nearby, and Plymouth. So they came from all different places. So what caught my attention was that they didn't like the weather, and but if I could say what my experience is about this interview, I quite liked it, and I found not only I learned about the topic, but I also found out about what these people think and why. To be honest, people are willing to help if you ask them questions. They kind of find it interesting to know, because I found it interesting because when I was asking the questions, for example, to Tony, he mentioned, well, I never thought about this, to be honest. And it's quite funny to, it's not only me asking the questions, but people actually start thinking about these questions, which they never do. So that's what I kind of found interesting. Reflection on the language development over the course of the interviews. While preparing the interviews, I had to search for words that would suit the interview. To be honest, I was quite nervous in the beginning because I didn't know what to expect from the people, and I wanted to get specific information about their lives in England, and I didn't know if people were going to be a little bit reserved, or if, well, I actually didn't know what to expect. As I did more interviews, I noticed I started to get more fluent, if we're going to talk about language, because I had to get in this flow of speaking English again, because, well, I do speak English when I'm teaching, but it's kind of different when you're speaking to people that lived in England, or if you're not talking to, it's quite different. It's a different setting. So yes, so because I repeated the questions constantly, I kind of got more I'm going to search for the word now. I kind of got more fluent and about certain things. Um, well, I did learn one expression from Sarah, which was stiff upper lip. This means you just have to get on with it without complaining. So that was kind of the word I learned, which I thought was very funny. Well, I hope you enjoyed this topic. Um, just to summarize the whole topic, England is a well-organized country. It's not as social as Holland. The weather is no good, but transport is organised. People are willing to have fun after work, and the housing is quite expensive. And most importantly, English have a lot of sense of humour, which is very good. Hope you enjoyed this.